Hey everybody, Bob Chick back with David Bay, another edition of The Last Rep. And David, things are heating up. We are at DEF CON 1, my friend. You know what that means?
DEF CON 1.
I'm
It
not sure
means
what
we
that means.
are just shy of 4 weeks out, actually, 4 weeks out from the Olympia. So,
No, wait. Forget about the Olympia. I'm talking about Baywatch, man. We're talking,
Baywatch.
bro,
Baywatch.
we've got
This
mere
weekend, man.
days.
This weekend, man. So Saturday is go time. So I'm at my all-time best, which is a good feeling. We're gonna see how it plays out. There's gonna be some good competition. A couple buddies of mine that I know have been putting their nose to the grindstone too. So only one way to find out, and that's to put on some speedos and oil up and do it out
So,
man.
so wait, if I'm catching that right, so you're not going to be doing battle or going to war or
Go to war, do it, pal. God,
you know,
no, we're gonna settle this like men in our speedos.
there we go. Speedos and opposing oil. That's always the way it
Yeah,
should be
yeah,
done.
yeah. It's
All right. Well,
It's
listen.
a very manly way to determine who's the best of the best.
All right, so obviously this is our last show before you don the stage this Saturday in Wisconsin. Any predictions, David?
Pain.
Good one.
the
Good one. I like that.
old Rocky 3 reference. No, I mean, my prediction is I'm going to be at my best. You know, I try to go into to every show that I compete at, regardless of my confidence levels, being humble. And you know, the thing about state level shows, and I'm sure you've seen this numerous times, and even national level shows, is you never know when there's going to be a ringer. So as I've said on previous shows, I've gone into a few feeling pretty good, where guys who are top 5 national or even national champions have shown up, and those guys can be tough to beat. So I'm going to go in confident that I'm doing and did everything that it took to win, and hopefully Saturday night I can say I'm Mr. Wisconsin. But like I said, only one way to find out. So, but I'm ready. It's go time. I'm ready to have some fun.
All right. Well, here's some last minute advices. Of course, listen. If there's only 2 guys in your class and you're second, you're actually last.
You
Okay.
didn't take. So I can't post if I can't post.
No.
I know 2 guys that two good actually good competitors that are going to be in my class. One just got done with Masters Nationals, and he's primed and ready to go, and he looked great out in Pittsburgh. Another guy that's been away from the stage for about 4 or 5 years due to some injuries. He good. Thanks for coming back at this one, But so I know there's going to be a couple guys in my class. But if it plays out and I take third out of 3 guys, I will not be claiming I made top 3 or top 5. I will humbly say that I took last place if I finish last out of the group I'm in. But I'm certainly not.
Let's also not use the phrase "it was a stacked class,"
It
bro.
was a stacked
If I
class.
hear this one more time, see it on Facebook. Yeah, took 8th in a stacked class at the whatever show. It's like, look it, man. Every show's stacked. Okay, you don't have to justify your placing. It is what it is, man. Whoever says the opposite, I'm waiting for that one. Took second in the weakest class I've ever seen.
Nobody
Things you're not
says
going to hear, but all right. Listen, best of luck on stage, David. Like I say, I
Thank you
got
so much.
nothing but good feelings. It's going to
Thank
be
you for all the good advices.
always the right ones, my friend.
Because as you see, it's not that hard
No,
to give the advices.
no, it's not. Listen, after the show, all right, pending whatever happens first or last, we will give away some of the secrets that we've been working on for this contest prep to our avid.
I don't think it's anything we haven't gone over too much, but specific to this prep, sure. I think a lot of people could learn a few things from my mistakes and your experiences over the years. So, and the more the closer I get to this prep, and the more I see people, kind of missing their mark or missing their peak or using the word peak week as they're getting ready for their last shows, the more I kind of just shake my head and just say, because I've been there, like we said before, I've done 12, 16, 20 week preps and felt really good a couple weeks out and woke up mornings at shows feeling like I wanted to just curl up in a ball and cry. As bad as that sounds. But when you put in that much work and you blow it, and I mean blow it in the last day or two, which I've done before, it's not a good feeling. So hopefully can pass along some good advices, but hopefully I have the physique where I feel confident enough to pass them along and people listen. But like I said, we'll find out on Saturday.
Yes, we will, my friend. Before we get into our special 4-part Olympia series, as obviously we are 4 weeks away, we're going to break down a few classes every week for the next 4 weeks, concluding with the men, of course, the Open. Lots of not so good news in the world of bodybuilding. Rich Piana, who obviously, as everybody knows by now, has been in a coma. I haven't heard any updates since then, so it doesn't sound like things are actually too good. And our good friend George Farah actually just went under the knife as well yesterday, kind of a continuation of his cancer situation. So I haven't heard any word back since he went in, but I assume all is hopefully better. Yeah, I've got a couple things to talk about here.
Yeah, a lot of speculation about Rich, and I honestly, I've had people message me as far as whether I know what's going on, and honestly, I don't. So I had the chance to speak with and interview Rich on a number of occasions, and him and his 5% crew were always very gracious to me, always did great interviews and had a lot of fun, and always put on a smile for the crew at MD when I was there, and so I wish Rich nothing but the best. Like I said, regardless of the situation that played out, that kind of ended up where he's at. Hope the best for him, and hope he comes out of it on the right side of where he needs to be, and gets healthy and moves forward doing what he loves. But like I said, Rich isn't one of those guys that I could say I have a close relationship with as far as this industry goes, but he's always been nothing but an absolute gentleman to me and the crew that I've worked with. So, nothing but the best for Rich. And as far as George goes, George, obviously, I know a lot better, having, worked alongside him for a while. And, as we've said before, there is anybody out there that's going to be a fighter and come through this thing, it's going to be George. And so best wishes his way. Obviously, surgery is a big deal. On one hand, it makes you a little bit worrisome when you hear people having surgery, but on the other hand, maybe it's a positive thing that the doctors thought that there was a remedy to help him get headed in the right direction. So, best wishes for George, and hopefully he makes a good recovery. And I'm, hoping I can run into him again sometime sooner or later. And he's always got a few good jokes and a couple of interesting comments to put a smile on your face.
Sure does. Well, listen, leading the pack into that arena, showing you that it can be done. I want to give a special shout out to my good buddy Ed Pariso. Everybody knows Ed, and of course his better half Betty. He had a hell of a year going through his own cancer situation, and came out of it as good as you can. I just talked to Ed the other day. We actually talk every day, but he's doing fantastic. I tell you, he's bounced back.
He's doing pretty good.
He's back in the gym. He's back on his Harley. He was in the pool the other day when I called with the grandkids. So, what? Good for him. Like I say, if anybody's a leader by example, it's Ed Pariso. So, props to him for putting his story out there. And like I say, leading by example. But, Ed's kicking ass, man.
Yeah. And, it seems like we've seen a lot of that stuff in the fitness industry. Obviously, Peter McGuff has been, he's been having his battle with cancer over the last couple of years. And, he's had some ups and some downs, but always a smile on his face. And, it's rough. I mean, not to get too much into personal stuff. I was just at a funeral this morning for a friend of mine lost his mom to cancer. And, it's a shitty thing. And, like we talked about before, it always seems like it's the good people this sort of stuff is happening to. But on the same side of the coin, it's the people who, are going to fight. And if anybody is going to, like I said, come out on the good side of this, it's those gentlemen, and they're all doing their best. And two fists up. Peter's taking that watch off and throwing down, so good for him. Look forward to seeing all those guys, and hopefully we can see George and Ed Peter at the Olympia. I'm not sure about their travel arrangements, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Well, we'll definitely be seeing Peter there, and it'll be great to see Peter there. Olympia, 4 weeks away, bro. We are there. It is right upon us once again. It has crept up. This is an exciting one. Now, we're going to split this into 4 parts because it's just too much to cover in 1 or 2 shows.
Absolutely.
We're going to start things off with Classic Physique. Now, the last shows have already been completed. All right, that means the Olympia qualification series is in the books. Top 3 top 3 earned their way to the Olympia. That was Roger Ferrer, Lee Banks was second in the points, and Divine Wilson, who really came on strong at the end of the year. Divine, we'll get into him in a minute.
Yep.
So we have the lineup set, and I got to be honest, David. There's 8 or 9 names here that I think are pretty damn impressive. Looking for that any of them could be in the top 5. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting lineup, and we had talked a little bit earlier, and I think one of the cool things about Classic Physique is that even though that they put this height and weight restriction on this division to try to bring back this classical look that everybody wanted from the, even the 60s and 70s and 80s and even into the 90s with your guys like Labrada and Gaspari and some of those guys, Bob Paris. There's still a lot of variety as far as types of physique in this Classic Physique division. I mean, you guys like Danny Hester and Chris Bumstead, Arash Rabar, Breon Ansley, Terrence Ruffin. I mean, these are guys all with incredible physiques in their own rights, but very different physiques when you put them on stage and compare them next to each other. And it's going to be a very difficult task for the judges, I think. I know last year I had a chance to speak with a lot of people after the show that were very happy with Danny Hester winning. I think a lot of people had Breon Ansley as their winner. Some people had Arash Rabar.
Right.
But it was a close show last year, and you're throwing a few more names in the mix this year with guys like Chris Bumstead and even Lee Banks looking phenomenal. Sadiq has kind of reinvented himself over the course of the last year. So it's definitely going to be a good show, and yeah, there's you can take a list of about 8 to 10 guys and potentially have a first call out with all of them.
Well, this kind of brings up some interesting points, and I'm glad you raised that. Classic Physique, in its entirety, there was never any classic physique. All right, let's just put that out there right now. Okay, if you go back in the day,
Absolutely.
that was just the bodybuilding of the day and kind of where it was. What was more classic, if there was anything about it, was the posing. Now, that has evolved / devolved over the years, however you want to really look at it. But the bottom line, David, is really it had more to do with the posing than it did the physiques. The physiques just weren't at that level yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, when they talk about Classic Physique division, they just think old school. And if you've been following bodybuilding for a long time, as obviously you have, and I have, and even when I started following bodybuilding as a kid because of Pumping Iron and older magazines that you end up finding at gyms and stuff, you follow guys that are maybe a little bit before your time. And if we look at some guys, the real popular guys, Tom Platz did not have a classic physique at all.
No,
very
so
wide
much.
waist, smaller arms, arguably the best legs of all time. Guys like Mike Katz. Mike Katz did not have a classic physique at all. Very classic posing, obviously, in Pumping Iron. But a lot of the good guys from back then didn't have classic physique. So, yeah, classic physique and classic structure and that physique that we've been looking for never really came or went. It just seems like they wanted to replicate that for an entire division. And so I think they've done a good job with that. But I agree with you. There's not really a time frame that we can pick apart. I mean, to me, even though he's bigger, a guy like Sean Roden or Dexter Jackson have very classical physiques to me, and they're some of your competitors in the men's open. And you can go back. Flex Wheeler was absolutely incredible. We'll get to him in a little bit, but as a bodybuilder, his physique was as classic as could possibly be. There's a video of Charles Claremont floating around Facebook where he's in incredible condition. A ton of muscle, ridiculous conditioning, but still a very classical physique. So, yeah, there was never an era that you could tie it to. I think it's just a look and a posing style that seems to have gotten forgotten.
And the funny thing is that there's only one thing you really need to be in classic physique, and that's a small waist.
Small waist.
That's it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'd like to
everything
see
else
guys
out.
with the nice sweep on the quads. We have a couple of guys in the classic physique division with a pretty interesting variance in quad size, and we'll get to that a little bit too when we start comparing some of the top guys. But yeah, the most important thing is a V-taper in a small waist, and we've discussed this from the beginning. Look, if you don't have a small waist, I don't care how tall you are or what you weigh. If you don't have a small waist relative to everything else, you shouldn't be competing in classic physique.
No, you're just not gonna. It's not the definition of what it's supposed to look like, or however you want to define that. Let's get into those comparisons, David, because they are vast and, like I say, they are as different. And I could pick out your top five, and they all have completely different physiques. Let's start at the top. Danny Hester obviously is going to be defending his title. Danny came out of nowhere, by the way, last year. Now, I bring this up for the following reason. I seen some footage this past week of Arash posing in front of Steve Weinberger and Jim Mannion. Obviously, down at Steve's gym, at Bev's gym, the East Coast Mecca, which a lot of the competitors make their way there. Obviously, want to get some tips and some pointers from the head judge, and obviously, if Mannion there, that's not a bad, not too bad of a deal either to get some tips from the boss. But the bottom line is this: listen, he did the same thing last year, and he didn't win. Okay.
Yeah.
So for all those claiming politics and there's your winner, he's going to listen. He did the same thing last year. Okay, he got beat by Danny Hester. Okay, a 50-year-old guy that I've known forever, greatest guy in the world. Love Danny. Okay, absolutely love him. He's a great personality, just a genuine good guy. He came out of nowhere. Nobody even knew his name. All right, he hasn't been on the competitive stage in years before he came back. Actually, won his pro card.
And then he
had no politics.
Winning his pro card, even
there was no politics there. They listen. If there was politics, it would have gone to any one of three other people. But they gave it to Danny Hester because they thought he had the best physique. Now that said, all right, taking that garbage out, I think it's going to be very difficult for Danny Hester to repeat this year.
He's definitely going to have a more challenging lineup. And when we talk about these guys, I mean, Breon Ansley looked phenomenal last year, and Breon slipped as low as fourth. I wouldn't have had him any lower than third.
Me too.
And I wouldn't have been upset had he won. When Danny Hester came out, Danny was my pick for the win right from the get-go, just because I think he had the total package, the small waist, great detail. He has a great back on a smaller frame. His posing obviously helped him get ahead of the rest of the crowd. But it wasn't an easy win for Danny, and he's going to be running into that again. Speaking of Arash Rabar, Arash, the runner-up last year, Arash looks like he's put on some good muscle. Now, how that's going to translate to his overall look on stage should be interesting. The one kind of critique about Arash last year was that his legs didn't quite match his upper body. Phenomenal upper body, small waist, quad sweep, again, not quite as good as some of the other competitors. And now you're going to throw somebody in the mix like a Chris Bumstead. I think it's going to be very interesting seeing a Chris Bumstead. And for my money, I'm putting Chris Bumstead in the first call out, okay? But if we put Chris Bumstead in that first call out, he's not as balanced, I don't think, as Danny, nor do I think Arash is as balanced as Danny. Arash being a little top-heavy, Chris obviously known for his ridiculous wheels and his small waist. I mean, so two very different looks, and until you see them standing next to each other, it's going to be tough to pick out, who's edging each other out, But a guy like Breon Ansley is incredibly polished, complete from top to bottom. Robert Timms, I feel like Robert might have gotten overlooked a little bit last year.
I agree.
I think he's difficult to judge, being that he is 6'3" or 6'4", and a lot of these guys in the classic physique. We look at Danny, we look at Arash, Sadiq, Breon, Terrence Ruffin. A lot of these guys are sub 5'10" guys, and so you throw somebody that's 6'4" in the mix, and it's not quite like bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, the old default thing was if you're taller than everybody else and everything else is equal, you're going to have the more imposing physique on stage, and you're going to win. The old Lou Ferrigno, Gunter, Quincy Taylor thing. But I don't know that in classic physique necessarily being a half a foot or 8 inches taller than the next guy is necessarily an advantage. And to be honest with you, with him towering over an entire group of guys, I think it becomes a little bit of a disadvantage because, like we talked about, it's the whole one of these things is not like the other. Correct. And I think he stands out, but not necessarily in a good fashion. But that being said, Robert Timms has got a phenomenal physique that can't be overlooked, and I think he's going to be another one of these guys where, even if he's not top 4 or top 5, I would really have a hard time seeing him outside of the top 10, slipping past the second call out.
Well, you've got Arash. I had winning last year, even though I love Danny and I've known him for a long time. I thought it was very close, but I had Arash in first, Danny in second. It was very close between those guys. He does look like he's put on some muscle. That could spell trouble for a whole bunch of other people. The Chris Bumstead and Robert Timms matchup I like very much. Both tall guys, both very small waist, very classic physiques, as it would be. That helps. Actually, they help each other in that because they've got somebody else who looks similar to them. Sadiq Hadzovic, I can also throw probably in that same group. Now, Sadiq, I thought was placed a little bit high last year.
I think a lot of people felt that, and I think he heard those rumblings too, and I think he's tried to remedy that. I mean, I saw pictures of Sadiq that he posted at about 5 weeks out, and he's in better shape from top to bottom than he was on stage last year, which was impressive to me. Now, upper body wise, I don't know how Sadiq is going to compare next to some of these guys. I really don't. Like I said, I do feel that he was placed a little bit high last year. He is definitely already ahead of where he was at last year, but I think when he gets down into real contest shape where his legs are as detailed as they need to be, he's going to be. I think he's going to be battling it out. I don't think he's going to be any sort of lock for first call out like he was last year.
No. Listen, nobody's a lock. I mean, Danny Hester's a lock. Obviously, he's the incumbent champ. We'll give him that. I mean, listen, you got Lee Banks. You've got you got a whole list here. You've got George Peterson. We haven't even mentioned yet. You got Terrence Ruffin, who actually pound for pound, I thought last year was up there as well. Now, listen, he ain't the biggest guy in the world, David, but I got to be honest, man. That kid's put together.
Pound for pound, I think Terrence Ruffin is one of the best competitors in the IFBB today, period. I mean, you see this guy stand on stage by himself, and he is phenomenal. I remember seeing him in Tampa last year doing Classic Physique where he beat Durham Charles. Terrence Ruffin is incredibly put together. The way his muscle bellies flow, his tie-ins, everything. I mean, Terrence Ruffin, it's for me, it's hard to overstate just how phenomenal a physique this guy has.
Sure.
He's just small. He's dealing with a small frame, but he's had a year to put on muscle, and a year can be a lot of time. And, I don't know where he fit in as far as his weight class, but I do believe he had some room to add some muscle. So Terrence could be very dangerous to these lot of guys. I mean, Terrence with a little bit of extra muscle, he could push for a top spot. Now, Terrence was in pretty phenomenal condition every time I've seen him on stage.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much sharper of a Terrence Ruffin we're going to see. And again, I don't know where he weighed in and how close he was to pushing the limits of the weight class. I do know they added some wiggle room for the IFBB pros this last year. So I know he got at least 5 pounds, I believe, in the shorter classes at least. And that's a lot when you're talking stage muscle. I did want to touch again on Sadiq just for a second. It was interesting seeing Sadiq on stage because we saw him on stage for years as a men's physique competitor. And he was arguably one of the leanest guys at the entire Olympia from the waist up. His conditioning was phenomenal. His midsection, his back, his arms, and his delts. And when we saw him get on stage last year as a classic physique competitor, it was very interesting because there was a huge discretion between the conditioning from his upper to his lower body, which obviously you would have never seen, being that he was a men's physique competitor. It looks like his issue he's addressing, he's a hard worker. I mean, Sadiq is, a lot of people think he's just, one of these pretty boys, a model type guy for GAT that flies around the globe and puts on his smile and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he's a hard worker, and you don't get in the kind of shape. The one thing that I always said that I respected about these men's physique competitors, regardless of whether you like that division or not, is the conditioning they bring. Because anybody who's gotten ready for a show knows that squats are hard, deadlifts are hard, but what separates the men from the boys is those last couple body fat percentage points. And Sadiq always got there. So the guy's a hard worker. And again, looking at his pictures from 5 weeks out, you can tell he is not playing around. He has put in the work. He's already leaner at 5 weeks out in the legs, in the upper body. And so I think he knows that a lot of people kind of felt like he got placed a little high last year and kind of almost wrote him off with the lineup that we had coming back this year. But I'm not so sure that I'm ready to say Sadiq can't be a first call-out guy again. Now, do I think he's going to push the top 3 again? I'm just not sure that I see. But I think we're going to see just a light years ahead version of physique, or rather version of Sadiq than what we saw last year. So I just want, like I said, I was very impressed by the pictures that I saw of him coming out, especially considering, being that he took a few punches last year after his Olympia showing.
Well, what's going to be interesting to see is how far this class has evolved over the last year. Now, we've seen this before. We've seen it with men's physique. And we've seen it with Mark Anthony, who was obviously your first 2-time champ in that division, respectively. But it's not like he got worse as he went on. Actually, I thought Mark looked, pretty good the first, 3-4 years he was in there. The problem is the class not only caught up but surpassed him, basically in year 3 to such a degree that it actually took him out of the running. To no fault of his own, it's just that the class kind of came up and there were some damn good physiques. I'll be curious to see on a quicker note because a lot of these guys are coming from either pro men's physique or bodybuilding. So they're a little bit more advanced as it is. So I would not be shocked, David, I got to be honest, if this class not only caught up to Danny Hester quickly, but you're going to see it in that first comparison as to who they bring out and, and who ends up faring the best out of that. I think the big boys are going to fare a little bit better this year. I think you're going to see Chris Bumstead up there. I think you're going to see Robert Timms up there. I think you might see Sadiq up there if he's brought that body in balance. But I think you're going to see some of the big boys up there this year.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I certainly don't want to write off anybody else on this list. I know this Rylan McDougall Batiste, the guy that just won, Vancouver a little bit ago, Darren Lytle. I mean, some of these names are names that might not be the most recognizable to people who have been following the Olympia, but these are good competitors. And like you said, this division is advancing, and I think next year we're going to see an even deeper lineup of competitors. And as what we're starting to see at this national level and at a lot of these pro shows, it's just these freaks. And when I say freaks, I mean freaks. These tiny waists, these sweeping quads. And that's what this division is going to develop into, is just a freak show of aesthetics. And, we're going to get a good preview of that, things to come in the next few years at this year's Olympia. But I think we should get on to the big topic for Classic Physique for 2017. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the return of Flex Wheeler to the IFBB Olympia stage. Not a bodybuilding return like we saw from Kevin Levrone last year, but an Olympia return nonetheless. Flex Wheeler, Classic Physique. How does Flex stack up with this group?
Well, there's two guys I actually want to talk about in the same breath, and that's Flex Wheeler and Durham Charles. Most notably because these two guys have actually competed against each other on the Olympia stage in men's bodybuilding. Now, Durham, everybody knew, obviously, decided to go into Classic to extend his career, which I thought was a good move. The couple added pounds will definitely benefit Durham because he was a little too thin, in my opinion, from what we saw in him as a bodybuilder. He had to lose a little bit too much muscle, which actually took some of the Classic look out. But Durham didn't fare that well in the latter part of the year. So some people saying that age might be catching up with him. And if not catching up with him,
the division's catching up with him.
Well, you got you've got younger crew coming, and they'll make you look old real quick. But let's focus on Flex Wheeler real quick here. This is going to be interesting. Much like Kevin last year, this is not something that we have anything to compare it to. We have absolutely no idea what Flex is going to end up looking like. If he's going to be comparable, if he's going to be in the mix, or if he's just going to be happy to be there. This will be great to see Flex on an Olympia stage again because let's face it, it's history in the making. It's an icon in the sport. I don't know how he's going to fare well in this lineup.
To be honest with you, I have no idea. I'm not going to make any predictions as far as Flex Wheeler. If I'm being realistic about his chances at being first call out or top 10 or whatever, all I know is that I'm going to go back to, and you know what? Frankly, I don't give a shit who criticizes me for it, and excuse my language. I'm going back to my old fan self saying that I am just excited to be able to be part of seeing Flex Wheeler on a competitive stage. And that's what I'm going to take away from this Olympia.
Sure.
And will there be that same 5 seconds of, oh, man, if he comes out and doesn't look how we expect him to? Sure. And after 5 seconds, it'll be gone, and I'll just sit back as a member of the media and as a fan and say, sure, you know what? I've been following this guy since I was a kid, and here I am watching Flex Wheeler on an Olympia stage. The one thing that we have to take into consideration is Flex's comeback is being done so with a considerably different mindset than Kevin's. When Kevin was coming back last year, he very much had the mindset that he was going to be competitive, that he was gunning for those top guys. He felt like he could be a top finisher. There were rumblings about him winning.
Yes, I remember those.
We knew that would be a stretch for as much as we love Kevin. But Flex has a totally different mindset coming back to the Olympia. He's coming back to the Olympia stage for him. He wants to get back on stage again. He seems like he's been very realistic about his chances. He knows he's been to these shows. Look, Flex has been covering these shows. He's at a lot of events. He knows how competitive these guys are. Now, I will go back to saying that Flex Wheeler in his prime, Flex Wheeler at the 1993 Arnold Classic, mops the floor. No disrespect to any of these guys. Flex Wheeler 1993 Arnold Classic mops the floor with anybody in this list 10 times over.
Yeah.
No disrespect to those guys, but look, that's just the way it is. And that's that.
But that had nothing to do with the criteria.
Not 1993,
yeah.
And it's not 1998 or 2002. It's 2017. And Flex is not he's not in his 20s or 30s anymore. He's bringing a 50-year-old plus physique. And, time rarely agrees with bodybuilders when you start pushing it past 50.
Well,
and so it's hard to say what we're going to see from Flex. So I am not making any predictions other than he looks damn good for a 50-year-old in the crowd, gets up on their feet for Flex Wheeler.
Well, I mean, past the age thing, now listen, yeah, Flex is going to be, he's 52, I believe, going to be 53. Well, obviously, eventually, but he'll at some point
He'll be 53 sooner.
He will be 53. I don't know when his birthday is. That's why I say that, because he could be 53 by then. Age notwithstanding, though, the biggest difference is what you're going to see is back in that day, back in that 93 or any of that era when Flex was mopping the floor with everybody, he didn't have any parameters. You could weigh whatever you wanted to. Didn't matter how tall you were versus your weight. Like I say, this is a whole different world now. I believe, if I'm correct, he's got to wing in under 210. Now, that's pretty light for a guy who's 5'11".
It is.
He's 5'10", 5'11".
He has gone on record numerous times, though, and I've heard it straight from Flex, change from 214 to 216. But he's right in that ballpark. He's very consistently within about a 2 or 3 pound number for his weight at the 93 Arnold Classic.
True.
So, again, look, guys, by no means am I saying if Flex shows up weighing 210 pounds, he's just going to be 93 minus 6 pounds. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he can bring a very impressive physique at 210 pounds still.
Possibly. I mean, and this is where it gets funny because you can't make any prediction. Like I say, first of all, it's not a true bodybuilding stage, like I say, in the sense. Secondly,
right.
Yeah, it's been some years since he's been on the Olympia stage. Actually, I think the last year he was in was the year I was in there, which was 2002. Yeah.
Yes.
2002.
Seventh, I believe he got 2002.
Yeah, and listen, that was impressive enough for a guy who allegedly was clean at that point.
Natural.
That it was natural. And listen, I'll take him for his word at that point.
Said he had the paperwork to prove it. They said it right on the webcast.
You know what? Listen, you can be top 7 in the world clean on the Olympia stage. You know, listen, there's no question he's a genetic marvel. I'm going to say the same thing about him as I did Kevin last year when we were covering this. If anybody could do it, it's Flex Wheeler. Much the same as Levrone. Even today, listen, if anybody could get back, if anybody would have a chance, it's Levrone. They both got those kind of freaky genetics that they blow up when they look at a weight. The minute they walk into the gym, they're up 5 pounds. I mean, it's just
right.
It's the way they are. You know, I've known guys like that throughout the years. But like I say, he's got guys half his age he's standing next to. He's got the shorter guys, which I think in some manners might have a little bit of a competitive advantage. It's kind of interesting because I think if you're really on the shorter end or really on the taller end, for some odd reason it just seems to favor you more. Like the taller guys actually got some weight that they can have on them. Now again, you've got to carry that in the right places, but
sure.
We'll see. I mean, I'm going to be excited to see Flex up there again too.
Absolutely.
If he looks respectable, I think he'll get a great ovation. I think people will recognize that, especially at the Olympia. And then we'll go from there. It'll be very, very interesting to see how he stacks up and if he can hold his own against these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, at the end of the day, I think Flex has been very realistic about his comeback. He's doing it for him. He's not saying that he's going to, come back and walk away with a classic physique gold medal, but he's gunning for his top spot. So, but in any regard, we're both going to be there. It's going to be Vegas as usual, a crazy weekend at the Olympia. Looking forward to heading out there in just 4 short weeks, and we shall see how it plays out. But I think we've covered it pretty decently. That this is going to be it's going to be a hell of a classic physique showdown, and I think the bodybuilding fans, when I say bodybuilding fans,
right.
are really going to enjoy this new division as it develops at the Olympia level.
And, here's something that's interesting. Listen, I would not be surprised if anybody could come out of here and to me and win this thing. You've got Divine Wilson, we haven't even mentioned. You've got Cleveland Thomas. You've got Damian Ricketts. You've got George Peterson, we did mention. Antonio Mitchell. Darren Lytle. Jamie Leroyce, I'm not familiar with at all. Robert Galva, I've never heard of. And you got Roger Ferrer, who I have seen many times on the circuit this year. But listen, all those guys are good.
That's what I was saying before. Is like some of these guys you don't really know what they're bringing. I don't know this this Leonardo Pacheco. I remember seeing him competing in men's physique, and I think he was a little big up top and was wasn't placing that well in men's physique. I was excited when he made the transition to classic physique. And look, there's some really good physiques here, and when Breon Ansley came, people who's Breon Ansley,
right.
Who's Terrence Ruffin. So any one of these guys that are on this list could step up and really make a name for themselves.
Absolutely.
As this division develops and matures, you're going to have more established names like you do in bodybuilding. But right now, the division is pretty much in its infancy, and so we're going to see a lot of names kind of jump onto the scene out of nowhere, and we could very well see it at this year's Olympia. I hope we do. It's always fun to see a couple of guys really come from nowhere and really shock the rest of the audience and the rest of the lineup.
Well, I talked to Robin Chang the other day. Olympia prep is in full mode in terms of production, and I'm expecting it's going to be a good one once again. Press conference has been expanded. We've got room for another 400 people this year, so hopefully we'll get everybody in. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm sure my old buddy DJ will have a new suit trying to match me once again, which is a futile effort, but he can give it a shot.
I tell you what, I've been watching Ballers on HBO a lot, right? So I got this HBO subscription so I could watch Game of Thrones. I was pirating it last time. I got Ballers, and probably the coolest thing about the show is the way The Rock dresses. So I'm a big fan of the matching pants with the vest, with the dress shirts, with the contrasting cuffs. So my Olympia MC outfit for the amateur Olympia, I'm gonna try to be
balling?
Imitating as The Rock as I can. I love that look of the matching vest with the dress pants, the contrast cuffs. I think it's sharp. So I don't know that I can pull off the same kind of flashy suits as you and DJ, but I'm going to try to look sharp. My first time emceeing, obviously, at the Olympia weekend, so I'm excited about that. But I'll try to hang with you guys as much as I can.
Yeah, it's always appreciated, of course. Often imitated, but never duplicated.
Yeah.
Listen, you're going to love it. It's going to be a great weekend, obviously, to be on that podium and on that same stage. So that's pretty cool. And that's a great, for those who don't know, the Olympia Amateurs is actually going to be held where we used to have the press conference, which is an actual theater.
Beautiful.
That's located right inside the Orleans. It's a beautiful, it's classic bodybuilding, old school type theater looking thing, which I love.
It really is. I was talking to Robin Chang the other day, going over some details as far as emceeing the Amateur Olympia, and he had told me we're going to be having it where we had the press conference the last few years, which was exciting for me because you walk in, it's your auditorium type setup with the theater seating, a beautiful stage. If the stage setup for the Amateur Olympia looks anything like the stage setup for the press conference, it's going to be phenomenal. But I was really excited. Obviously for me to be able to go out to Vegas and be part of the Olympia weekend is a big thing, but to actually stand on a stage that physically looks the way that stage setup has been the last couple of years, it's going to be exciting for me. So where is the new press conference going to be this year?
The new press conference, my friend, will be on the Joe Weider finals stage at the arena.
Well, there you go. And I'm assuming the seating is it going to be floor seating, or are they going to sell the arena to the?
We're going to sell as much as we can, but listen, if we can fill up the floor there, which is pretty impressive in terms of seating. Like I say, the last couple of years we've left almost 500 people that we couldn't get in, and we just literally
if you guys have anybody that's been to the Olympia press conference knows when you walk out of that thing, it is an absolute zoo at the Orleans of people who
sure
get in. They're trying to get a glimpse of the bodybuilders, trying to get pictures. We've tried to do videos and stuff right outside there. It's a madhouse. So, and it seems every year Phil wins, and every year that people want to knock him off just a little bit more, that press conference gets a little bit more exciting, a little bit more exciting. I'm sure you and Dennis are going to push a few buttons this year and make it a good press conference. So if you guys are there for Olympia weekend and you're there on Thursday, look, you're there for the Olympia. Go to the press conference. I'm telling you,
that's pretty cool.
You might think, the press conference, whatever. Are there going to be some guys who say, I'm just happy to be here, brought my best package? Of course. But trust me, from what I hear, there's going to be some fireworks this year.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of fireworks or lack thereof, for those wondering, and we'll cover this more later, I do believe that Kai Green has opted not to take the special invitation that was offered to him. I think that's fairly obvious by now, but in case anybody didn't get the memo, it was put in his lap. I mean, he was given an opportunity. He chose not to take it, so that's kind of it for that story.
Yeah, just clear it up, one and done. There's no. I mean, but I would love to see Kai on the stage in the future, but I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to make, as we've said before, the Olympia is bigger than Kai Green, and I don't want to make it. Look, I love Kai, and him and I have built a good relationship over the last year or so. But I just, I tell you what, I don't want to focus too much on him. He's not going to be there, and there's a whole lot of good guys that are going to be there, and it's going to be exciting. But we will get to that in a couple of weeks here.
We sure will. The only reason I bring that up, David, just for the record, is because there was speculation, obviously, in the past that he was being kept out in some manner. It was a political type thing, or there was some issue, but business-wise, obviously, that's been all cleared up at this point. He was extended an invite by the IFBB Pro League, Jim Mannion himself, and the Olympia Committee, and Robin Chang. So it was there. It was in his lap. He had every opportunity and chose not to take it. So that pretty much closes that. And, David, that closes out another edition of The Last Rep. You, my friend, will be getting ready just a few days away, donning the stage in Wisconsin, and
yes, sir.
Making all the cheeseheads proud out there. So
we're going to try. So.
All right. Well, David, best of luck, and obviously I can't wait to get post the show, and obviously the next edition of The Last Rep will have the results of your show, obviously part 2 of our Olympia series, and it's never a dull week in bodybuilding, so that's going to wrap it up, David. For David Bay, I'm Bob Chick, and we are out of here.